Guys, welcome to another episode of Tampa Bay Real Producers. This, of course, is the podcast that is made for real producers by real producers and with none other than Tampa Bay's real producers, such as Angela Duncan. How are you today?
I am doing awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
No doubt. It's good to see you again. It's been a little while since we last connected. Angela, formerly of the Duncan Duo, and any of you, of course, are familiar with that brand, I would imagine, if you've been around, unless you've been sleeping under a rock for the last, 20 years in Tampa Bay real estate. The Duncan Duo has built an amazing brand. We'll touch on that for a few minutes. And then Angela really is here to also talk about her brand called Empower Her Money, and I can't wait to dive into that story too and how that all got started. So, Angela, we first met because we did feature you guys as a Duncan Duo Spotlight. You were a cover feature on Tampa Bay Real Producers. This was back in, I guess it was 2019? It was our first year. I think we actually had you in that first full year's calendar, if I remember correctly. You guys were the official team of the Tampa Bay Lightning, I think. You guys were rocking the Lightning jerseys on the cover and all that jazz. So let's talk a little bit about just your background. Did you grow up in Tampa Bay? If not, how you got yourself to Tampa Bay and where it started, where you got interested in real estate and how that brand started to take off?
Yeah, so I've always been very interested in real estate. I bought my first house before my daughter was born, so over 20 years ago. But I grew up in San Diego. And very randomly via MySpace, I met my ex-husband, Andrew Duncan. He popped up on my page and we started talking for like a year. And he's in Tampa, I'm in San Diego.
That was like the equivalent of sliding into people's DMs?
Yeah, it was so random. But we dated for a year and he's in Tampa, I'm in San Diego. And we're like, okay, who's moving? And so at the time I was working for Bank of America and I wasn't enjoying where I was at. And so he's like, come to Tampa. I've got family here and we'll just figure it out. So he got into real estate at that time. And I moved to Tampa and we moved to South Tampa, was working for Bank of America downtown. And he was getting so busy. He was just cold calling and doing open houses. And he's like, I need to hire an assistant. And I said, well, I don't really like working for the bank. So why don't I come help you? And I thought, this would be easy, right? So I joined him and we fired each other and I quit. Like, we had to figure out a lot of things.
Right.
And so just starting off being married, I was in a new city and here I am in a new field that I just didn't know what I was doing. But
your background, you said, was in banking?
Yeah, I worked for private wealth management for Bank of America and we had just gone through merger after merger. I was working like 80-hour weeks, bringing a laptop home. So, I had gone to my manager and I was like, I really want like a promotion. I want to get into a sales role. And he told me, and I never forget this, he's like, you're not a salesperson.
Wow.
He's like, you should stay and be an operations manager. And I was like, no, so.
That rubbed you the wrong way,
It did. And so I prayed about it and I ended up joining it and the Duncan Duo started. How the name came about, though, we were with Keller Williams at the time, and Pat Kuhn, who I know is still around, I'm not sure if she's still in real estate, just celebrated a birthday, and she came up with the name the Duncan Duo because we didn't want to be like the Duncan team. There was already a Duncan group, so we wanted something catchy. Andrew was always really good with marketing, and so the Duncan Duo was born.
Wow. So Pat was the one responsible for the Duncan Duo name, huh?
Yes, she came up with the name.
Very cool. Okay. And so do you remember what year was it that Duncan Duo was born?
2007.
Okay. So that was an interesting year in real estate.
Oh, my goodness.
Period, right?
Yes.
A lot of different things going on during that time. So did you guys dive? I know Andrew has a background on the investment side. We had talked about that way back. And so was it an immediate jump into like retail, residential real estate? Is that how things started? Or was it kind of a bridge from some of the investments and the flipping to get into the retail side?
Yeah, so we started with the retail side. I think we used to call ourselves the bottom feeders, where like our average sale price at the time was under $100,000. So we really needed to figure out how to increase that. But as you know, 2007, 8, 9, 10, like that was the worst time to get into real estate, but also the best time because we learned how to do Craigslist. We learned how to do short sales, how to do bank-owned properties. So we just casted the biggest net possible and just kind of grew from there.
And so one of the things that I think I always has admired about your brand, as you mentioned earlier, is the creativity behind the marketing.
Yes.
And part of how I think the name even took off was just being creative with,
I mean, even things just like billboard campaigns and other stuff, commercials and your relationship with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'd like to talk a little bit about that too. So do you feel like the marketing prowess that you guys had was a big reason why you were able to get success as quickly as you did, or do you credit it to other things?
I think it's a little of both. So the marketing side, I give kudos to Andrew. He's got a very forward-thinking marketing brain, and I just trusted him. But what I learned in the process is that I was keeping a lot of our private life private, but people want to know the real person. They don't want to just know the brand behind it. They want to know the person. And so where I added a lot of value was I'm very involved in charity. I'm very involved with the community. And I became more public about that because I think people want to see other sides of you. They don't want to just see the sales piece of it. So this morning I was just with Tim Marks with Metropolitan Ministries. We're doing a piece of that because we're heading into the holiday season. But not only myself being involved in the community, but taking our entire team and giving them the opportunity to pick, like, which charity do you want to work with? Is it veterans this time? It's with, the Humane Society. But also just getting out there and having people know who we are. So between Andrew and all the marketing side, like what you see with the billboards, the radio, the lightning, but also having the heart behind it too. I think the heart is so important, and that's how people relate to you. And that's how people want to do business with you, because they see that you're actually giving back to the community, which is giving so much to you as well.
No doubt. Yeah, that's awesome. Did you have various organizations that you guys were partnered with Duncan Duo? Or was there one particular one that was kind of the cornerstone?
For me, Metropolitan Ministry is very near and dear to my heart because I grew up in poverty. My mother had a single mother. Also with Julie Weintraub with Hounds Across the Bay. I love what she's doing. She gives so much to the community, but also like the Housing Education Alliance, because they're the front runners to make sure that we have funding for low-income housing, between the county, the city, and the state level. I've sat on all of those boards because we wanted to figure out like how else do we make a difference in our community? How do we bridge that gap between the people who need and the people who have, and how do we teach to make sure that other people are getting involved too? So yeah, I always advocate, like, find a charity, find something that speaks to you, and if you can give time, money, whatever that looks like, but also make it public, because it's not about you when you're making it public. You're sharing their story and giving other people opportunity to go help too.
Yeah, no doubt. It's awesome. What was your favorite part, Angela, of being involved in the real estate business? I know you just touched on your focus on the charitable aspects, and that might be the answer to that question. But were there parts of like the actual real estate business that either you owned or were responsible for and really felt like was your baby, or was that not really your experience?
Yeah, no. So the charity side was a big part of what I did. Operations is a big part of what I did. But also I was a Dave Ramsey certified coach. And what I see a lot of times is when agents, especially when they're new to the business, they get into the business, they get that commission check, they go spend it, and then at the end of the year, they're like, oh, I owe taxes. How much money did I make? They get that 1099. They're like, where did this money go? So I was a huge believer in teaching especially the newer agents, how to balance their budget, how to look at their credit card statements, how to figure out what their income is, what their taxes is, how to prepare for taxes, and making sure that they are living a budget, because they're based on commission and it goes up and down. And so we need to figure out, like, what does that picture look like for you, making sure you're saving for retirement, making sure that you put away money for, any additional expenses that are going to be coming up. I love teaching about the money piece. And so the agents are great at going out and selling houses and creating that income for their family, but I want to teach them how to keep it too.
And that explains the Empower Her Money brand, does it not? So that's a perfect segue, and we're going to get into that for sure. So you guys, obviously, like I said, did a great job at building your brand. We don't have to focus a ton on the numbers and stuff, but there were times where you guys were doing over $200 million a year as a team, some of the highest rated and ranked volume in all of the county, right? Your team at one point, I think, do you remember what the biggest team was? Was it 80 agents, somewhere in that ballpark?
It was between the whole team, it was probably around the 50 mark. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then when I met you, I think you had either just started or you were looking into this insurance business, right? We Insure, I believe, was the name of it?
Yep, launched in 2019.
Okay, and so what was the genesis of that, and why you started to diversify a little bit in these different brands?
Yeah, so we had a marketing machine. Obviously, that machine was working. And we had a partnership with an insurance company at the time, and I would sit with him and ask him about his numbers. We are helping get 100 clients a month in front of you. What are your conversion numbers? And his conversion was so small. So I had to dive a little bit more into the business and say, like, how do we help you create more business for you with all of the leads that we already have? And we just found that wasn't running his business the way that we ran our business. And we just understood the marketing, the closing, the conversion a lot better. So we came up with an idea that I was going to go get my insurance license. Well, I didn't know that you don't just walk in and get your insurance license, but I didn't know. So I studied, took a class, passed it the first time, and then we were going to partner with this company, and we couldn't come to terms. But what I learned about insurance, which is so different than the real estate market, is that insurance is sold merely on gross. So you can have a business that makes $0 at the end of the day and still have a business that's worth millions of dollars. And so we thought about that. We're like, well, we should just launch our own. Well, you can't. Because you can't go to carriers. They're not going to just say, hey, okay, sell my insurance. So we ended up going with the We Insure brand. We've already been, Remax at the time, so we knew what the franchise route looked like. So we bought a We Insure franchise, and they did so much training with me and brought other agents to help teach me about insurance. I knew about sales, I knew about conversion, but I needed to learn the insurance piece. So we just wanted to have our clients have the best experience, and they weren't getting that with the other company. And we wanted to make sure that they were educated about insurance. They knew what they were buying, because you can go save $5 here, but if you don't know what the coverages are, then I want to teach you. And again, this just goes back, like, I've always wanted to teach about money. So the insurance piece just fit because of my passion for teaching. And so adding that.
It is a murky world too. I feel like most people have no idea what the heck they're covered for, what they should be covered for. It's hard to read the statements sometimes. It just gets a little complicated.
Yeah, it's like, what does that word mean? If you don't know what it means, then you don't know what insurance actually you're buying until you need it. And then you're like, oh, well, I don't have that coverage. Well, no one taught you. Right. So I'm very passionate about the teaching part of it. And also, so it started with the agents. Like, I wanted to go through insurance with each of the agents first to make sure that they understood what they're telling their clients, because, if this is your largest asset that you're buying, let's make sure it's covered correctly. So that's kind of where the insurance piece came from. And
you had that from 2019, and I think you said you just sold it recently?
I sold my company in February of this year.
Very cool. Okay. Did you end up getting the valuations you were hoping for?
No, because it's such a tough market right now. So I got into, before real estate, I was a financial advisor. So I got into that right before the tech bubble, right? Then I got into real estate right before the housing bubble burst. And then I got into insurance when we're in like the worst market possible in Florida. So
perfect timing for you.
I know, but I wasn't enjoying it. And life's too short, and I just didn't want to be in something that I wasn't feeling like I was adding value.
So let's talk about how this brand Empower Her Money. I'm curious, you've mentioned your passion for teaching a few times. Where do you think that comes from?
And I think I really learned my why this year when I wrote my book. I grew up in poverty. I tell my story. I'm a survivor of childhood abuse, and I grew up in poverty. My mom was an alcoholic, and she didn't work, and we moved more times than I can remember. So I never want another woman to feel like she's stuck in her situation because she just doesn't know any better. And so many times women stay in abusive situations and poverty situations because they're not financially educated. And so from a very early age, I was like, I never want to be in poverty. Like, I will never, ever live this lifestyle. If I get married and have kids, my children will never experience the pain that I went through. And so I started studying finance in college. I took the 5-year route because I was working while trying to pay for school. And I've looked for different avenues over the years to teach money. And now I really feel like I'm at a point in my life where I want to take all of that knowledge and put it in just easy platforms so that people can become financially educated. Like, we're in this year, 2023, right? We're hyperinflation. The cost of living is astronomical, especially in Tampa Bay. We have a war going on, and there's just so much negativity in the world that I feel like a lot of it could be solved with some just basic financial education.
Yeah, I love it. As you've probably heard from many different people, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was 19 years old. And in many ways, that opened my eyes to different thought processes when it came to money, right? And how I think the wealthy think of money. And I think there's a lot of what you just said is about education. It's about trying to maybe take some of the wool off of people's eyes and open up to what's possible as long as they're educated in some way, shape, or form. And I also think it's powerful that, your story growing up, it sounds like, in a tough upbringing and some of the challenges that you came from. There's so much beauty sometimes that comes from that, that rough background and that rough story. I think, I know that you are familiar with Tony Robbins' work as well. And I mean, he's got one of the most inspirational stories about his upbringing and how he came from, I think his mom had 5 or 6 different husbands, and some of them were abusive. And some of the stories he tells like make you want to break out in tears. But you look about how he was able to take those stories and turn into this ridiculous, like, mega superstar, and he's changed and impacted so many lives that it's always ironic to me and beautiful how some people get trapped in that story and they stay there. But if you can take from a negative situation and be able to learn from it, it also can develop into something beautiful. And you've obviously been doing that and continue to thrive this year. So let's talk about Empower Her Money. You wrote the book. When did you start the book?
I started it earlier this year. I had a vision in mind.
Was it before or after you sold the insurance company?
After.
Okay.
When I sold the insurance company, I was like, I'm done. I'm never going to own a company again. I don't want to work anymore. Like, I was just so burnt from running that company that I was like, I'm just going to retire. And then that's just not my personality. Mm-hmm. And I got bored.
That lasted for about a week?
Yeah, I got bored. And I was like, I feel like that God is calling me. And he's like, I have given you years of experience and education, and it's time for you to give back. And so the book came to an idea, but I didn't want to write like a full novel. I wanted my first book to just pique curiosity for people to read the tips in the book and say, what is that? And say, like, I need to know more about that, or I didn't know about that. So it's a really simple, easy to read book. It's 101 tips of just getting you started on that financial journey. And I wanted it to be a simple start. I envision more coming from it. I've already written my second draft of my next book. But
you let us say what that's going to be called?
Yeah, it's going to be called Money is My Mission. And
Nice.
It really draws in my faith more on that one, and talking about the experiences I've had and teaching other people about money. But the first book, I wanted to just people to get started. And that's want to keep it very simple and get started.
I mean, a lot of people spend years on getting even that first book out. It sounds like you got it done. Your mind was focused on it, and you got it published within months. From what you're saying here. So, what was that process like for you? Was it just you dove right in and it just came out of you, or was it grueling at times? Like, how did that shake itself out?
I think when you are in business, you always have a coach or a mentor. I've always learned that if I want to learn how to do something, I'm going to find someone who's an expert, who's done it before, who's doing it better, who can teach me how to do it. So I hired a coach, and my coach helped me put it into book format. I'm a graduate of YouTube University. There's so much information on YouTube,
Yes, there
but
is.
I learned the back end of Amazon from videos. And so we planned, had a marketing team, and we launched the book on a Wednesday. And I've learned the Amazon system, so I was able to hit 4 categories bestseller my first day. I beat out Dave Ramsey in the finance field. So like that was just so incredible.
That's awesome.
But I continue to hear people say, like, I've read your book. Tell me about this, or I didn't know about that. And to know that you're having that kind of reach with people is just so incredible. So I learned a lot about writing a book in that process, but I'm a student. I'm always going to be a learner because I don't feel like I can educate other people unless I'm still learning on my journey too.
No doubt. Yeah. It's definitely one of my core values as well, is never stop learning, right?
Yes.
Always growing. So your book, again, is called Empower Her Money. I'm curious, like, do you find that I would imagine your target audience are females, right? Whether they're entrepreneurs or not, just, I guess, any female who has an interest in wanting to learn basic money skills and build wealth. But I'm assuming you probably have a lot of male fans as well who have learned from the same principles. So did you go at this with the intent of, I want to specifically reach the female demographic, and that was your objective? Or tell me about, like, just the title and why you wanted to focus on the female demographic.
I ended up changing the name of the book. Originally, it was going to be Empower Her Money, which is my brand, but I changed it to Empower Your Money, because money does not care what your gender is. It doesn't care what you know. It doesn't care where you came from. It doesn't matter if you're man, woman, black, white. It just does not care. So everything that's in the book can be used by anybody. And I mean, I have like parents talking to their kids about it, which is just so empowering. And I love hearing those stories. But it's for everybody. You know, it's not,
Very cool.
It's pink because I love pink, but
And you got to be true to yourself, right?
Yeah. But money just, it doesn't care. So it's for everybody.
Very cool. And so since you launched the book, when did the book get launched?
Goodness, I think it's been 2 months now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And has it been a bit of a whirlwind, like just doing like book tours or being invited on different shows and podcasts? And what's it been like?
I wanted it more to just get information out. I'm doing a video series on it, which I've been doing on my Instagram, Empower Her Money, just to go more in depth in each of the tips, because it is a very simple tip, and then I want to teach more about it. I don't think I'll be doing book tours. I really want to focus on giving free information, which is more of the podcast platforms, kind of, what we're doing today, and see where that goes. I don't have the plan. I'm just carrying out the plan that's already set in front of me.
I love that. Give our audience a couple of nuggets from the book. What are some principles that you write about, that you believe in, that you think would draw some people in to check it out if they haven't done it yet?
Yeah. Well, the first one is probably most important, is invest in yourself. What we're doing today, getting education, finding a topic that interests you, and becoming more of an expert in that field. So invest in yourself, either taking the time, the money, go to conferences, webinars, read books, watch videos, whatever that is. Continue to be a student, just like you said, So investing in yourself is most important, because you can't achieve greatness without being a student first. So that's definitely number one. Number two is, don't be afraid to open your credit card statements, your bank statements. Like, figure out, what are you spending? What are you making? And then make some goals. And I like to have fun with goals. I'm still a vision board person. So I do it in December, where I have a big whiteboard, and it's crazy what magazines cost nowadays. So I typically will go online and look for photos and print it out, because it's much cheaper, and I'm still about that budget. But I create a vision board that's personal and business, and I have short-term, mid-term, long-term, and then I'll put something really big on there. I think I had I'm going to be a best-selling author on one of my vision boards years ago.
That's cool.
And now that it's come to fruition, it's just so great to see. But yeah, knowing your numbers. You've got to know your numbers, because you can't move forward in your goals unless you know where you are today.
Yeah, I love it. There's some good stuff there. Basic principles that I think a lot of people ignore. How many people out there don't even really open up their statements, because they're intimidated by it. They don't even want to look at it. They know they're probably overspending, but they don't exactly know what areas. And it's an uncomfortable thing for so many people.
Yeah. And when we do that, I'll sit down with a client, we'll go through their bank statements or their credit card statements. They're like, oh, I'm still paying for that. And then I'll total it up for them and say, how long do you think you've been spending this money? 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And then we'll do a calculation. I'll show them, if you just put that in a basic mutual fund at 8%, you spent this is how much you lost because you didn't invest it. Yeah. And it's really an eye opener for them. And it piques that curiosity, and they're like, okay, I've got to change that. But until it's in your face and you recognize it, you're not going to make the change.
So other than the book, you mentioned earlier that you also now have your own podcast, right? Is that also called Empower Your Money?
It's called Empower Her Money.
Her Money. All right. So we've gone from your to her to her. Okay. So we got everything covered here.
Yes.
And so you got the podcast, you got the book, and it sounds like you also do coaching. Is that correct?
Bit, yes.
Okay. Is this just like group coaching, one-on-one coaching?
It's one-on-one coaching, and this is more my charity side. I've got a couple of charities in Miami that I work with, and when they have women who they feel like are needing that education, I'll do one-on-one coaching with them once a month. So I find that that's helpful, because they don't know what they don't know, and they just want someone to believe in them, and they want somewhere to start. So I find a lot of value in doing that as well.
Is there anything else that you have right now as part of the platform?
No, the podcast, my goal is to be the #1 female entrepreneur on podcast platforms. I interview women who are in business or CEOs, and we just talk about money, because I have a story and I can share that and I can give you my points, but every one of us has a story, and every one of us has learned something of value that you can give back.
Very much so. Now, are these interviews usually in person, or are they done with people all over the country, all over the world?
All over the world, actually. So I do it via Zoom, and I've had people from Nigeria and London, because it's such a different perspective about money.
Yeah.
And they don't have as much education available as we do here in the U.S., and that we really take it granted for. But I love hearing the different stories and different perspectives on what people think money is, or what they're spending money on, or what a budget looks like. So I really enjoy the international piece of it.
It's very cool. So with your experience now, Angela, being, building up a great real estate brand, you have a background in money on the finance side with Bank of America. You had some experience in insurance. I'm sure there maybe are some other things involved in there too that we haven't even talked about. Now, you've really gone out and you've built your own brand. Do you feel like you like everything that you've done up until now was objectively and purposefully done to get you to where you are today, because this is the brand that is your legacy, and you're building something that's you're always going to be proud of for years to come? Is that kind of how you view it now?
I do view it that way. I feel like God was preparing me for what was next. And it took me a little while to be comfortable, to be able to say that I have experience, because I think self-doubt is just easy for a lot of people, easy for me to, like, why am I here? Why me? Why now? And I had to do a lot of reflecting and prayer around that, to know that I have had 25 years of experience, that there's some knowledge that I need to share. It is my mission to share. It's my responsibility to share, because I have been preparing for this moment for over 2 decades.
It's an awesome perspective. I think, again, so many people can be devastated when like something that they've been successful in, just going back to your experience with the Duncan duo, right? You guys had a great brand. You guys were making good money, very well known in the community. And then things change, right? And all of a sudden you're in a different space. Like for a lot of people, they wouldn't bounce back from that very well, as quickly as you seem to transition into, again, use it all as a learning process to become a better version of yourself. And I applaud you for that. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it was really hard.
You've done.
What you touched on was actually really hard. So when you build a brand that is built around your name and your face for so long, and, Andrew and I, we were amazing business partners, and the marriage didn't work, and we're still friends today. But I really lost my identity, like walking away from that, not being the Duncan duo anymore. I'm like, now what? What do I do? Like, who am I? So I took a good year of just self-reflection and said, what could be next for me, and not necessarily view that as a negative. Yes, the marriage didn't work out, but I learned so much from it. And I knew that, like, I can't just stop. I've got to be able to move forward. But I needed to give myself grace. I needed to give myself time off so that I could grow into whatever was next for me.
And you guys had 2 beautiful kids? Is that...
Just one. She's
okay.
Yeah, she's down in FAU. She's in college. And of course, she's a marketing major. So her and Andrew are like 2 peas in a pod with that.
And you're in Miami most of the time now, right?
Yes, I live in Miami.
So that must be cool for her too. She gets to experience Miami every now and again, visit mom, hang out in Tampa a little bit as well, where she's in school anyway by you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of neat that you get to spend that time
together. It's good
together.
for me because now I get to see her more often, because when I was in Tampa, she's like, I'm not driving home. So now being in Miami, I'm much closer to her.
No doubt.
And, I want to let her live. She's a teen, or she's 20 now. So I want her to have the space and ability to do what she wants to do to grow, but also have me there in case she needs me.
Maybe you'll have to interview her on the podcast one time about her experiences with money, huh?
Oh, she has been interviewed, and I bring her to a lot of conferences because I want her to learn not just from me, but from other people, but also for her to tell her story. Like, I have 2 parents that are entrepreneurs. It's a lot of pressure for a kid.
Yeah.
And we taught her so many things very early on that other parents don't. And she has found that sometimes it's hard to relate to other kids because they're not working. Everything is paid for. She's got a job. She's in a sorority. She pays for a lot of her own stuff. And so many kids were not financially educated in high school or even now.
Totally.
And she's like trying to teach them about money, and they just don't understand because it wasn't taught to them.
Right.
So all I tell her is, like, just be a role model. And when they're ready, they're going to be curious. They're going to ask you questions. So just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, she's going to have a bright future, huh? That entrepreneurial mind at a young age.
I hope so.
We have the cash flow, what's that game? Cash flow, it's called. The Rich Dad, Poor Dad. They created the board game, right? So we have it at our house, and I've been trying to play it with my kids. We started playing Monopoly first.
Yeah. I
felt like they started to understand more about things with Monopoly. It was a little easier for them to get it for some reason. And then the cash flow, if you've ever played it, is a little bit more like you actually fill out like cash flow reports and stuff as part of the game. But it's a cool tool to be able to try to instill those principles and that thought process in younger, at whatever age really. My oldest daughter is 9, so she's just starting to kind of figure out all those numbers and how that all shakes out.
Yeah.
But
And
I think anytime you can create tools like that, it's huge for getting them to rethink money, because I didn't have that either growing up, and really wasn't until I read Rich Dad Poor Dad at 19 that I started thinking differently.
Yeah, and I encourage, anyone who's got teenagers especially to have them come to events with them. I'm very heavy because I'm in Miami. Grant Cardone, his office is in Aventura. It's like 15 minutes from my house. So I'm very involved in that community, which has been great for me because as I lost one identity, I'm now part of another real estate empire, right? Because he's obviously doing, like him or not, he's doing incredible things because he's in the real estate field, and he knows a lot more than I do. So I'm going to, trust a lot of what he says. But I've brought her to a couple of the events with me so that she can see other entrepreneurs, so that she can learn about real estate investing, so that all of that experience comes to her, not from mom, but from other people who are already doing it.
Totally.
So I love that aspect of it. And bringing her to conferences now that she's old enough to understand it, I can just see the interest that gets piqued in her brain. She met like the number one marketing agency in the country as a female, and she was bringing her under her wing and giving her free videos and all this information that I'm not going to give to her, that she's just going to get because she's showing up, she's taking action and being part of the other community.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've gone to a couple of Grant's stuff. He's amazing, full of energy, right? I actually heard his wife too speak. Have you ever met Elena?
Yeah, I've met Elena. Yeah, I'm in her ladies community.
Very cool. So she spoke at a Wealth Accelerators event. She was on a panel that was in Orlando. This was probably about 2 years ago now. And it was cool to hear her talk about her relationship with Grant and what it was like to grow up in this high power, high net worth, but more of like a famous household, because a lot of people know their name now all over the world, and also just to be a mom, and to figure out those ins and outs of how to make that work. So it was cool to have her on the listen, learn from her in that panel way. What have your experience with Grant? I'm curious with that whole program. Like, what do you think you've learned from that? You're now, I think you mentioned earlier, getting invested in some of the investment side, right, with real estate again, which you've had a little bit of background with. So is it the bigger like commercial projects that I know Grant specializes in that you're now tapping into as well, or is there other aspects of that community that have been beneficial for you?
I think that's it. What I learned from him is going bigger is scary, but it's more profitable and it's actually easier. So I used to own, Andrew and I had a lot of single family rentals, and getting calls on Christmas or a Sunday evening because the toilet, even when you have a property manager in place, a lot of that responsibility can still fall on you, and your returns are much smaller. So if you take that whole portfolio, sell it off, and go into commercial and go more into like apartment complexes, storage units, I don't have to deal with any of that.
Yeah.
But I have a better return. I get better depreciation because of the write-offs. And this last year we had the bonus depreciation, and the upside of it is just tremendous. So that's what I think I've learned from him, is to stop thinking so small and being scared. And it's not really taking bigger risks to buy an apartment complex as long as you're doing it correctly. You're still doing the same underwriting like you would on a single family rental. You're still looking at insurance and taxes, making sure the property management is good. But now I am completely hands off. I don't have to do anything but receive my check every month.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a huge fan of the commercial side. It's something I've been talking to my friends about. I want to build more of my portfolio revolving around apartment buildings. I have a couple of friends who have crushed it with mobile home parks and self-storage facilities. Those three asset classes really resonate with me, and I love the cash flow components that all three of them bring. And it's funny because I think there's a natural tendency for people to think they're too big and they're scared of that. But at the same time, if you buy them smart, they're actually safer in so many ways because of the leverage component that it brings than, as you said, a single family home could bring. You lose one tenant, you're now 100% vacant, right?
Right.
With a single family home versus the economies of scale that a 50 unit or 100 unit apartment building bring. It's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah. And they're still building, we're always going to have a need for housing. So they're still building apartments. I stick to the bigger cities. Storage units, people still buy stuff. So I think that's not going to go away.
Yep.
The one market that I would probably stay away from, and I'd be interested to see how this changes over the next 10 years, is student housing. There's schools that are growing, but there's also a lot of schools that are shrinking as kids are deciding whether or not they're going to go to college.
Doing more of the virtual college thing.
They don't have to go live around the campus anymore. Like my daughter, like half of her classes are still virtual. She doesn't have to go in person post-COVID anymore.
Interesting.
So student housing is probably
about that. How much COVID had. Obviously, COVID changed everything, but I haven't realized how much that's probably changed the student experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's probably the one market I would say stay away from.
That's a good point. Very good point. Are you involved with Grant's like syndication projects, or do you invest on like your own individual apartment buildings? Is that something you're looking at?
A little of both. So he has a real estate club. You got to pay to play. So you're in the real estate club, but you get direct access to him. So I have a call with him every Wednesday. We talk about the real estate market. Not much going on right now just because of the interest rate environment. We're heading into a political year, so uncertainty the market doesn't like. But we're seeing a lot of foreclosures, actually, especially in the Texas market. What's very interesting to me, and I get this question quite often, is if the value of the property has gone down, interest rates go up, insurance goes up, taxes go up, and the syndicant, the owner, can no longer make the payments. Well, you would think that the bank would negotiate, but they don't, because if they negotiate with one, they got to negotiate with all. So they'd rather just take back that asset than fire sell it and recoup some cash. And so that's where the opportunity is right now. It's the foreclosures that we're starting to see. 100, 200, 300 unit apartment complexes being foreclosed on. The bank cannot manage it. They don't want to hold that on their books. So they're just flipping it, turning it around, and selling it for the highest cash buyer that's available.
Interesting. And that's where his Grant Cardone Capital Fund comes into play, right?
Yeah. So you give him money. It's a syndication. Most of it is accredited investors, which you have to hit certain income and certain net worth numbers to do that. But I mean, he's got direct access to things that I don't have access to.
Yeah.
And he studies the market every single day. I don't. So I still say, know who you're getting in business with, know that your values align, and know that you trust that person. I have been burned. Last year, I went on an investment with a group. I did not do my due diligence enough and ended up losing because we couldn't close on that property. But you've got to do your research. Just like anything that you're investing in, do your research.
Yeah, that's a great point. That might be the tip for this question I was going to ask you, but if someone wants to get involved in that space, right, do you recommend going down the syndication route? Is that a safer way, in your opinion, compared to just looking at and trying to find their own apartment building and trying to find a local property management company to help run it and buying it outright their own? What would you recommend as the way to kind of go in today's market, or just in general?
Depends on your investment goal. So if you need to be in control of it, definitely go find your own. But do your research first, figure out what you're comfortable with. Are you paying cash? Are you getting a loan? Can you even qualify? Those type of things are things that you're going to want to look at. Now, going the syndication route and giving your money to someone who's already doing the purchase is easier, but you also have to know that you can't say, hey, I need that money back. I got to pay rent, or, my car broke down. That money's there until they sell that asset, and you have no control over that.
Right.
So if you're looking to put money somewhere and just receive a check every month, it is a good route to go. But it just depends on what your goals are. Just know that that's very long term, that you can't just get that money back. And it could be, I have one syndication that I've been invested in over 10 years. That was our 5-year mark was when we were supposed to sell. But then we hit this environment that we're in right now. So our saying right now is stay alive till 25, which means getting past this whole market we're in. Hopefully interest rates, come down a little. And once we know who the president is next year, good, bad, doesn't matter. Once the market knows what we're doing, then that's kind of when it chills out a little bit.
Very cool. So for people who might not know you that well yet on the personal side, I'm going to ask you a couple rapid fire questions just to kind of let it all bear out. All right.
Yes.
So this might be what we just talked about a little bit, but what is your favorite book, other than your own, book, author, seminar maybe that you've attended that you feel like has made the biggest impact on you personally or professionally?
Okay, so current book right now is Wealthy Habits by Candy Valentino. It is like step by step by step. I love numbers. I like process. If we're going to talk about a retirement account, tell me the different options and why I should or shouldn't do that type of retirement account. So that's my favorite. The person I listen to most still Tony Robbins. I think for me personally, I can get into like a darker place with my mindset sometimes, and he helps just snap me out of that.
He certainly does.
So I love listening to him because he's like, stop thinking that way. He's like, you're better than that. So I love that from that perspective. From seminars for me, because I'm still very heavy in the real estate market, is Grant Cardone. I go to just about everything that's real estate related. We have another one coming up in December down in South Florida. I will be there, but it's getting in the room with the right people and learning from them, because there's someone's doing what you're doing better. And the only way for me to move forward is to figure out what they're doing. Yeah,
I love that. I'm a huge fan of a lot of the things I haven't read that book, Wealthy Habits, though. I'm going to have to pick that up.
Yeah.
That's a cool recommendation. Do you listen to Tony's podcast?
He's not as great on the podcast. If I'm listening to Tony, it's usually on YouTube in the background when I'm working from home on the TV. But all I listen to is podcasts. I mean, I love country music, but I just have really gravitated, I don't know, maybe I'm getting older, podcasts. So I listen to...
Country music is good for the soul, I think,
Yes, I know. You guys have Jason Aldean here tomorrow. I'm very jealous, but I'll see Cole Swindell next week.
Nice.
But podcasts for me, I listen to Farnoosh Tarubi and Nicole Lapin. They're both female podcasters that talk about money. So obviously that's my space. So I listen to them a lot, but I also listen to I listen to the Motley Fool. They talk about the stock market. I love Darren Hardy. the Success Mentor. He
Yep.
does a 5-minute podcast, which I like because it's like one thing you can implement today. And I'm all about taking action.
He wrote the Entrepreneur roller coaster book, didn't he?
Yeah, and the compound effect.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I haven't read the Compound Effect yet, but I've read the Entrepreneur roller coaster. Yeah.
Oh, the compound effect is huge for me because it's like you take little steps and then the trajectory can be huge. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a book called The Slight Edge that's similar in the same principle. And
Gotcha.
written by Jeff Olson. It's one of my favorite books as well, just about the importance of those compounding habits and how that adds up over time for sure.
Yeah.
What do you just love to do for fun, Angela, when you're relaxing, chilling? What gets you fired up? What's your passion?
I live in Miami, so there's always something to do between music and art festivals. But I'm still a master networker. So we've got Tech Basel coming up pretty soon, which is all a tech market. And I feel like I'm clueless in that world. So it's time for me to learn more about like AI and the emerging markets that are coming. We're also like just an emerging market city. So I just get out and learn about different people's businesses.
Yeah, we're actually hosting, we still do these monthly panels at Whiskey Cake for real producers. And our topic for November is about AI mastery. And so we're putting some panelists together of people that specialize in that niche and with that same intent, just to try to, it's a whole new world when you think about what's possible. You know, if you could really leverage AI, it's amazing. I feel like AI itself is going to create more millionaires in a faster period of time than even the internet did when you know how to leverage it properly. And so I'm hoping we can tap into a little bit of that with some conversation at the panel.
And especially if the real estate agents who struggle doing the content piece of it,
Yeah.
there are programs now where it gets to know who you are and it'll create videos with you and your voice putting out content that you would say, or it's like pulling content about like real estate, for example, and then it produces those videos to your social media. So it's not even you anymore.
It's wild.
And so we were making a joke the other day because
Ultimate leverage, right?
Yeah,
It's pretty much cloning yourself.
yeah, because I'm single in Miami, and so they were talking about like now they're gonna have dating websites, and you don't even know if you're talking to the person or if it's their AI. So
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not gonna be a good thing.
As if dating wasn't complicated enough, right?
Yeah.
What is your favorite movie or show?
I love scary movies, so Halloween's my favorite time of year. My daughter and I, we just watched The Exorcist, we watched the Nun, so I'm all about like I just want to be
Really?
scared.
You're a horror fan?
Yeah,
huh?
I don't like
would
gory.
not have taken that from you. I would have thought Pink, you know, girly girl type
I
of
did
a
see
movie.
the Barbie.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, but no.
You went
horror
the opposite
films.
extreme entirely, like
Yes.
black horror movies, huh?
Yes, and we have this movie theater in Dania Beach down in Miami, and it's 4DX. So not only does the screen extend to the sides, but your seats move too. So while you're getting scared and you're like watching everything from all around, it's a lot of fun.
They got like things like jabbing you
They
in the
do.
sides and stuff.
They
That's
do,
crazy.
and like blowing air and like waters in your face. So yeah, it's like, you know, being at Universal, but now I get to watch it in a movie form.
That's funny. Do you have a favorite food?
I hate cooking. If you open my fridge, it's like water bottles. That's it. So that's maybe why
It's
I'm
important
still.
to stay hydrated.
I was gonna say maybe that's why I'm still single. Because I don't cook. But no, Miami is also food mecca. Italian food, Japanese food, a lot of Cuban type of food, but like we have everything. So I just love eating
no
out.
doubt. There's eating out in Miami is a unique experience
Yes.
for sure. There's a lot of options.
Thank God, because I mean I don't cook. I can't imagine living in a small town that didn't have restaurants. I would like starve.
Right. So I'm gonna we're running out of time, but I'm gonna ask you one of my favorite questions, which has to do with your legacy. And I think we touched on that a little bit with the Empower Your Money brand. And so at some point, you know, we all will hopefully sit on that rocking chair and look back and contemplate what are we most proud of or what do we want to be remembered for, right? And so when you think about your legacy, Angela, what do you think is most important to you that you would want to be most remembered for personally or professionally?
Yeah. So I have this vision that came to me this year where I'm on stage and I'm speaking and teaching about money. And I have this woman that comes up to me and just gives me a hug. And she's just like, thank you. You have changed my life. And if I can help just bridge that gap and break cycles for people so that they get out of that poverty mindset. I mean, so much of what we're taught as kids sticks with us in our entire life. And we're taught money doesn't grow on trees. I can't afford that. You don't need that. But we can. But it's just changing your education and becoming curious about money and using it for the tool that it is and not thinking it's good or bad. I want to help people not be in poverty.
I love it. That's a big mission and one that I think is really needed for sure, locally, regionally, and globally. So I think you have a massive audience that you can reach for sure. Makes a lot of sense. It was great to have you here and being able to kind of dive into your story. Obviously, you have a unique angle as somebody who was very, very actively involved in Tampa Bay real estate for such a long time, which is really the genesis of this podcast, Tampa Bay Real Producers. But you bring what you've brought since with your book and your new brand and your podcast and your mission, that I hope it really reached our audience in a unique way. And so for people who might want to reach out to you and pick your brain a little bit more and just follow you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram, Empower Her Money. I'm on LinkedIn as Angela Duncan, Facebook, Angela Duncan, but definitely check out my podcast, Empower Her Money. It's on all platforms.
Empower her money or your money?
Empower her money.
Her money. All right. Don't forget the her part. Empower her money, and you can find Angela's information anywhere. We end every episode with a challenge here, and this is something I stole from Tony Robbins as well, is like if you listen to a podcast or you read a book or you attend a seminar and you don't take action, then it really was a waste of your time. And so this 45-minute conversation, if you had a chance to listen through this, what are you going to take from this podcast that you can put to work today? Don't wait. That can help move you forward in a specific direction. Maybe you just need to order Angela's book, right? And read that, pick out a couple of processes. Maybe there's something else. I know Angela talked about how she got a mentor when she wanted to write a book. Maybe you need to hire a coach because you want to grow your real estate business, or you want to write your own book, or you want to do something else, but you just don't have that guidance yet. Maybe you're interested in buying an apartment building or a syndication that you want to get involved with. Angela gave us a couple of nuggets there too of things that you should look for and people that you can talk to. Your network is so important, and Angela has done a great job in making sure she's surrounded by the right people in the things that she's doing. And so what is it for you? Like, what's one action step that you can take that's going to move you forward in an empowering direction? And if you do that, then the time that you invested in watching these podcasts will be completely worth it. So we will see you on the next episode of Tampa Bay Real Producers. Stay classy. We'll see you there.